Paul in Woodinville, Washington. Hey, Paul, what's on your mind?
Hey, Tom. I wanted to share a story, I guess, or a perspective with you that I call this white perspective, and it has to do with my disability as a blind person.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm a middle-aged, I guess, sort of middle-class-looking white guy, and I've noticed that I have a different experience with people of various races and ethnicities with regard to that.
Mm-hmm.
And what's come up recently has been kind of shocking. Most of the time, black people always help me. Like when I'm on a bus, crowded bus. I used to work down in the Central District here in Seattle, which is a higher percentage of black compared to where I live. In the afternoon when I get off work, it was very crowded, and I would get on the bus, and black people would always say, tell somebody else, get up, let him sit down, let him sit down.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of a, help him. He wants to sit, he needs to sit down.
Right.
People I've noticed of foreign-speaking people, they'll even come up to me on the street and say, where are you going? I'll take you there.
Mm-hmm.
They'll even pull over in their car and say, where are you going? I'll take you there, right?
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, one guy walked with me about a mile. I said, no, it's okay. He said, no, this is very dangerous. I'm really uncomfortable with you walking in this traffic. I will take you. I have nothing else to do. He walked me all the way to where I was going.
Let me, if I can inject, Paul. There's an interesting study that was published this week indicating that while psychopaths are less than 1% of the population, among CEOs, this was a study of almost 200 CEOs in major corporations, 20% of them were psychopaths, incapable of empathy, and thus they rose to the top of these companies. One of the things, and this may well be made and not born, because one of the things that we know is that women are better than men at noticing social cues, and that by and large, people of color are better than whites, and poor people are better than rich people. And I think you can kind of lump all those in the same kind of category at noticing social cues. And the reason why is because historically their survival has depended upon it. When women were the property of men, and they still are to some extent in the United States and around the world, they had to be more cautious about all the social cues, what's going on around them. People of color were slaves. People of color were locked out for 100 years. People of color still are largely locked out, and in a position where just having your car break down on a highway can lead to being executed by a couple of white cops. So you have to be more attentive to everybody's cues. And what that attentiveness does is it creates a higher level of empathy. And what you just described is a perfect example of that. Back to you.
Right. Let me compare some very recent experiences with white people in my predominantly white neighborhood.
Right, who by the way, are not in a position where they have to constantly monitor the world around them, because white people, by and large, at least middle-class white people, are not at immediate risk of being shot every time a police officer sees them, and not at risk of being beaten or raped if they're female, et cetera. Back to you, Paul.
Yeah, and see if you can pick up. I'm not sure how to describe this. First of all, these people are well-intended. These remarks, I'm not criticizing them. Right. I'm walking to the drugstore. It's like, I don't know, just down the street from me. I was going down to pick up something, and I was going into the parking lot just off the sidewalk, and a woman who was pulling out of the parking lot rolled down her window and she said, "Excuse me, are you trying to walk straight on the sidewalk?" I said, "Well, what do you mean?" She goes, "Well, if you're trying to walk straight, you're not. You're veering off into the parking lot." And I said, "I'm going to the drugstore." She said, oh, well, you're doing okay then. So about 3 days later, I'm going to lump these together quickly because I'm standing at the bus across the street from the high school coming back from my walk. I walk at the high school track every morning. And a white guy walks past me and says, "Excuse me, did you know that you're quite a long distance from the crosswalk?" I said, "The crosswalk?" He goes, "Yeah, you're a good, almost 100 feet from it." I said, "I'm waiting for a bus." I'm standing in front of a sign that says bus. She goes, oh, I thought you were trying to cross the street. And 3 days after that, a guy pulled up at that same stop. He pulled up in his car, and he said, "I'm really worried. If you start walking down the street that way, there's a lot of construction stuff, signs and cones and barrels. I'd hate for you to trip on those things." And I said, "You think it would be better if I took the bus?" He said, "Yeah, I think so." I'm standing in front of a bus sign, right?
So the white people all told you what you were doing wrong.
Right.
And the people of color all offered to help out.
Exactly. They all told me. And here's the thing: is that my perception was I thought about this, Tom, is that the other thing I get is from white people, mostly white women. I call them faith healing attacks. They want to come up and pray for me. They put their hands on me and start speaking in tongues. And I guess once they feel I'm healed, then they say, "Have a nice day." And I thought, so is the perception that I am so pathetic, I need God's help, and I don't even know where I am? I thought, no wonder I've had such a lot of trouble getting hired for a job in my life.
Yeah.
And then I thought, if this is the way they think of a white middle-class person who's just like them, only I'm blind, how are they perceiving other people who look a lot different than they are?
Right. Right. Well, I think we know that from the news, and we know that from what happened to Terrence Crutcher, and we know that from what happened to Sandra Bland, and we know that from what happened to Tamir Rice, and we know that from what happened to Eric Garner, and the list just goes on and on and on. And tragically, I mean, I think in the neighborhood of 60 to 80 police killings of unarmed black people so far this year. I've got to find the story, and I thought I had it printed out, but yeah, this is. Yeah. Paul, thank you for sharing your stories with us. They absolutely confirm that narrative that I was sharing with you. And it's a cultural one. This is a cultural one. This is how people are raised, what their world experience, life experience is. Paul, thank you for the call.